With these unseasonably warm December days we've been enjoying, it may not feel like winter and the holiday season, but there is no mistaking the fact that the days are much shorter and we are in fact coming up very close to the winter solstice and Christmas. Right now we are in the midst of Advent and Hanukkah, and for many people it is time to start thinking about family, friends, and food. And when it comes to food around the holidays, one of the first names that comes to my mind is Tallgrass Bakery. For more than 30 years, Tallgrass has been providing the best in holiday baking to Winnipeggers, creating tasty food made from scratch using only the best in locally grown and sourced ingredients. And joining me here in the Classic 107 studio to talk about the holidays and Christmas baking, I am joined by Tabitha Langel, one of the co-owners of Tallgrass Bakery. Hey, Tabitha, nice to have you back.
It's wonderful to be here.
I want to start out by asking about your thoughts about the holiday season. I know the times of the year are very important to you from our past conversations. Why do you think this season is so special and celebrated around the globe?
I think because the earthly connection is to the solstice. I think it doesn't matter which country, every country responds to the sun and the moon and the stars. And that makes sense. If you can move the ocean with the tide, we ought to be looking up. But the solstice is very special. And of course, the Christian year is based around the earth year. And I think that it's what unites us as people of the globe and of the earth. I love it.
Yeah, it's so great. One of the things that goes along with the winter solstice and faith-based traditions is this idea of feasting and fasting. Why do you think it is so important around this time of year? And why do you think so many religions do it?
And again, I think there's, if you really believe that, for instance, in our Christian story, that the divine came to dwell with us, that's a pretty big mystery. And that we are part of that. So the idea was to get ready for these great mysteries, whether it's Hanukkah and you're celebrating the light, whatever it is. I think to prepare to receive a great mystery in every faith requires sacrifice and getting ready and fasting from certain things that are distracting, like too much sugar. So in medieval days, that meant, because the church had such shaped people's directives and lives, that you had great fasts around Christmas and Easter to prepare for the mystery. So I think what it led to was a lot of suffering, because medieval times were hard enough.
Sure.
And many of our foods and traditions and good songs and stories come from that. So, but once that period was over, it was just one big celebration of eggs and sugar and butter and all of these things we couldn't have. And so that's why with most Christmas baking, they're so incredibly rich.
Yeah, this idea of working hard where there's not a lot of food, and then all of a sudden when you're celebrating, it's time to break out the
yes,
stuff.
And ring the bells and bring it on. So, and it's harder for us, I think, in a modern sense. We're losing the sense of fasting. And you really can't feast unless you fast. And it may not be food we need to fast from. It may be being hard on ourselves. It may be grumbling. It may, there's more than one fast.
Can you talk about some of your favorite baking items that are popular at Tallgrass around this time of year?
And lately, the Wiener Tort is really big. I didn't grow up with it. It was Icelandic grandma. One of my friends said, you should make Wiener Tort. My grandma would teach you. And so this Icelandic wonderful matriarch called Joan, who lived in Wolseley, took us into her home Sunday morning because, and she made it very clear she didn't like missing church, but she would just for this time to teach us. And she showed us how, and then she had 7 layers, and between us this beautiful prune stuff. It took a long time, and she made sure we knew how to roll it out. Then And then we decided to improve it. Why do we have to have 7 layers? We can maybe do better. It was the early years if we just do 5 layers. Well, she came back through that, closed the door with some force and said, "Why 5? What does it say?" And she made us realize it's a creation story. You're honoring the 7, has to be 7.
Yes.
My recipe has to be 7.
Yeah.
So it's always 7.
The 7 days of creation.
Yeah. So that's the Wiener Tort. Its origin was actually the coffee houses of Vienna, but it became the most popular in Iceland, where it's now hardly made anymore. But in Canada, it's now being touted as it's Canadians are now keeping it alive. So that's one of my favorites.
Especially with the large Icelandic population here in Manitoba, that's for sure.
To which we owe a lot, including the health sciences hospital. Yes.
What about fruitcake?
Fruitcake, when we decided to make fruitcake, we decided there were so many cheap fruitcakes that we wouldn't make one of those. So we found one that was a medium fruitcake, very dense. You do not have to get on a bike to find the next piece of fruit.
Yeah.
So it's dense, rich. We swaddle it in brandy-laden clothes for a week or so before we sell it. And it's interesting. In spite of all the jokes about it, we sell more and more of it every year.
Yeah.
It's a nostalgia thing.
Yeah, I love me a good piece of fruitcake. It's really great.
I think the other great story is the Christmas pudding, the plum pudding.
Mm-hmm.
That's another one. The recipe there, one of our staff, when I wanted to make it, it wasn't in my tradition, but he's Scottish, and he said, "My grandmother makes the best." She was 90 years old. This was 20 years ago. He said, "I'll ask her." And he asked her, and she said, "On condition they don't change it, other than we could do butter instead of suet." But the recipe then was from her great-grandmother. And you know what? It didn't need to be changed. It has some interesting traditions with it, because it came about, I think, in England about the time when the trade routes opened up. And exotic fruit became available. And apparently whatever you had, you brought. But apparently you are supposed to stir from east to west to honor and bring back the returning light. So maybe when we eat, we can pass from east to west. So I really treasure that and the integrity of these women who saved and honored these recipes. So we pass them along in that tradition. And then there's the cookies.
Yes. Do you want to talk about the cookies, the German hazelnuts? And,
the German hazelnuts. No one loves hazelnuts like the Italians and the Germans. So there's a lot of hazelnuts in it. And then dip it in a dark chocolate. And it's the most popular cookie. The Russian tea biscuit is close second. Comes from the Tsar's kitchen, and it's hard to call anything a Russian anything right now, but we decided to stick with the history, and only in the Tsar's kitchen would it be considered a biscuit. It is basically pecans and butter and sugar doused, and I love the look of that one because it's rolled in icing sugar, so it's snow. It makes you think of white snow, which we're still missing this year.
Yeah, that's really good, that's for sure. Tabitha, all of the baking sounds so great. Once the Christmas season is done, is there what's next coming up for you in 2024? Is there anything interesting happening?
I'll just mention 2 more things quickly. One is the Cristo Pomo bread, which again is a medieval bread, which is one of those breads that melts in your mouth because it has so much butter, eggs, sugar. Only enough flour to hold those 3 ingredients together. Yeah. And it's an anise seed. And when you toast it, fabulous. The other thing that our head baker, Louis, is from France, and he brought the tradition of the king's cakes, which is puff pastry and almond paste. And in each is a hidden bean. This year it'll be made by a local potter, and it's a bean that looks like a baby, and when you cut that, whoever gets that bean is king or queen of the day. That is available for the 12 days of Christmas. And in France, they party January away with that. So we offer that. Looking ahead, I think there is an excitement that is, and there's a rumor out there, and I think it is true, but it's not quite yet. It's an Advent season. We are opening a commissary, or hoping to, in St. Boniface. But we won't talk about the details, just keep posted, because until the people who do all the due diligence have finished crossing the T's and the I's.
Yeah.
But it is exciting. We really do need a place where we can expand the kitchen. There's such a demand for local food and meals and canning. And the Forks has been gracious and wonderful, but we've kind of outgrown the space. So
Need something more. And for our listeners, once again, all of the ingredients at Tallgrass, it's all locally sourced, right?
Well, except at Christmas, not as much.
Okay.
Because we don't have pecans or almonds. At Christmas, we do the medieval thing and go all out. But of course, our flour and our honey and lots, and in the kitchen, absolutely. The localness stays. And then the bread and then the everyday items. But Christmas, we splurge and use things from afar.
Everything sounds so good, and it sounds so exciting next year with the opening of the commissary. I'm going to wrap up the conversation by asking, is there any one message that you want to leave with people at this time of year? What would it be?
Yeah, there is. I notice in people, the world is tense right now. But with that, I notice also a real tenderness in people. So I think to acknowledge our dependence on the gifts of the earth and on sharing those in a way that does not lead to destruction or war. I think I recognize that post-COVID, there seems to be a renewed commitment on people to support local in a way that I think through the COVID, we all became aware of what supply lines can do.
Sure.
When we rely on them for too far away. So I just want to say thank you to people who support the local farmers, the local independent businesses, of which Winnipeg has many wonderful bakeries. We're just one of. Thanks to our staff who work skillfully from scratch and with good cheer. It's wonderful. So to the citizens of Manitoba, there is a real spirit of goodwill among us, because at the Forks we see hundreds and hundreds of people. And I'm just struck and watching how they treat each other. And I just want to say blessings. Have a wonderful, wonderful Christmas. And thank you for being with us in this amazing place called Winnipeg and on this amazing planet. We're also, and maybe in closing say, may we remember that we are in a spirit of truth and reconciliation, and there's so much good happening. So thank you, Winnipeg.
Absolutely. Tabitha, that is just so lovely. It is great, again, to have you here in studio. All the best to you and yours for the holiday season. And thanks for taking the time to stop by and talk to us about Christmas at Tallgrass. As always, it's been a pleasure.
It is a pleasure. Thank you.